Thank you. All right, we'll start again here. All right, Tom here, FlipAnything USA. And today we're going to talk about this redlining and black ownership and black real estate investors and why there aren't as many, or it depends on your perspective. I have probably a very different
point of view
look on this stuff than a lot of people, including Darius. Who knows?
Well, yeah, and I think that's what makes this an awesome conversation. Can they hear us now? Because I still see no audio. I don't know if they can hear us.
No, they can hear us.
Let us know if y'all can hear us.
Yeah, they can hear us, I'm sure.
Okay, so long story short, I thought this would be a great video to not only educate the audience, but also provide hope, right? Not from a political standpoint.
Oh, you can't hear anything.
Can't hear a thing. Oh, is it? I can hear. Yeah, I can hear. It's playing through here.
Okay.
All
Now
right.
they can hear. Okay.
All right. So, should we start again, or should we?
All right, we'll start all over again.
Take 3.
Yeah.
Go, Tom.
All right. So anyhow, look, it's Black History Month. I just was made aware of this morning, and.
This is the Valentine's Day.
It's funny because Darius says, he goes, something we only care about 28 days out of the year, and I'm thinking, is it that much? And, you know, it's just not. Sorry.
Oh, see, but what I love about this is going to be an honest conversation, and nobody's going to get their feelings hurt because there's going to be this honest discourse. But Tom is absolutely
You're so
correct,
confident,
right?
yeah.
So most people, they're like 28. No, I'll give you 1. I'll give you an hour, right?
Yeah, maybe half hour.
I'll give you 5 minutes.
Let's see.
So what this is this was a video that we saw. There's a bigger platform.
I hadn't seen it, but go ahead.
It's called Earn Your Leisure, and they're an education platform, and they call themselves edutainment because they're very entertaining and they educate. But they have a majority black audience. They have a majority minority audience because minorities for most of history have been left out of investment opportunities, right?
Or they're not aware.
They're not aware, right?
Yeah. See, you're going to see me have a very different take with this stuff because I don't like the victimizing that I see going on in a lot of black communities and anything that gets politicized, they try to victimize people for political reasons, and it's horrible. And people get used, and it's just everything goes to shit when it gets politicized, and most things do.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, especially when it comes to racial stuff, and any time, they'll politicize anything.
Yeah.
When there's opportunity to do so, but. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I thought we were in a unique position here because Tom is very informative. He's well educated when it comes to making money in real estate. And I just thought it would be a great opportunity. I'm a black guy. I know the black culture. We have this nice yin and yang between us that gives us an opportunity to talk about these things without, labeling Tom this or labeling me that and all sorts of stuff. So, but one thing that you guys may not know is real estate in America has I'm going to go ahead and say it has a racist history, right? It has
listen, he doesn't speak for me, but go ahead.
it has a racist, a racial
it does not.
history. It does.
What do you mean?
What I mean.
You got to be very specific.
Okay,
It's too blanket. Sorry.
Let me be specific. There have been certain laws passed and enforced.
Well, yeah. Listen, So I don't know if we want to go down and start with that, but yeah. And so what he's saying, and I don't even gonna put words in your mouth, but we'll get to this video and we'll do a review on this. But it's certainly, there's all kinds of problems with this subject and being talking about it honestly. You got to be very specific. Otherwise, it's too easy to get brushed with a broad brush of being, you're racist. You know what I mean? All that sort of thing. And so, I just want to be careful with what you're saying.
Very inflammatory words.
Yeah.
Blow up Top channel.
Yeah. So what I will say is, and we'll get this thing rolling, and we'll just do some commentary as we watch this thing. So if you just got here, hang on. I've been making money in real estate for over 40 years now, and made a lot of it. And I know some fantastic black investors, some fantastic white investors. Is black bad now? Jesus.
No, it's just funny.
I can't say black.
It's just funny because it's like, it's comical because to your point, it doesn't need to be said, but to hear
No,
it,
we're talking
it's
about
funny.
Black History Month. So if you can say Black History Month, I'm going to refer to blacks as blacks. I mean, there's no reason not to. It's Black History Month. Okay. Ay, ay, ay. But it's bad when I say it. No. Anyways.
I can say it, Tom.
Yeah,
You
I
can.
know. Of course you can. All right. We'll be back in a second. We'll get into this. Thanks. All right. So this is called, what is the name of this, Darius?
Our title or their title?
Their title. Oh, how redlining crippled black home ownership. Yes. Ebony and I have been working in perfect harmony. There you go. Yeah.
Here we go. You ready for this, Tom?
Yeah. All right. So look, let's play this. We'll play it at normal speed a little bit, and then we'll bring it up a little bit. So this is MG and Kiana Watson. And let's watch.
So today topic is we're discussing Black home ownership in America, right? It is Black History Month. And Kiana and I both are ownership advocates. We don't care if you're buying your primary residence, investment property, a vacation home. We don't really care.
Home, just buy
a tiny home, a commercial property. We don't care. Just own some ish, like Aisha Selden says, right? And that's what we're all about. But I think a lot of you listen to a lot of internet people and you don't want to buy real estate. You want to wait or you want to rent. And that's your prerogative. But I think you guys got to really understand the history of ownership in America and the trials and tribulations that our people went through to even be in a position where today we can buy homes freely with no problem. It wasn't always like that, right, Kiana?
No, I agree. It was not always like that. We can't discount the power of the fact that we have the ability to purchase real estate, not as minorities. At a time we weren't able to, and just really think about that. We're in Black History Month, right? This is the month of February. I feel like Black History Month should be every month. But when we think about our history and the history of home ownership, it wasn't that long ago that we were unable to, as realtors, even practice real estate as and be a part of the board of realtors. Beyond that, it wasn't too long ago where we were getting redlined and we were unable to buy property. And it's important that we highlight those obstacles and those challenges, and then go from there where we can start continue to bridge the gap. Right? We need to
100%.
bridge the gap, and I want to share some data with you guys, if I will. And so if you can think about it, new research from the Urban Institute says that we have not moved the needle at all when it comes to Black home ownership in the last 40 years.
Okay. So it'll be interesting where she gets her data, but I'm always suspect of data because the way they skew it.
Yeah.
And I'm not even, I'm just saying I don't trust data because the way they obtain it and they skew the numbers.
Well, and also the people who finance the research are usually have some type of agenda as well. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and I'm not even. I don't think they do, but yeah, they're if it's the numbers you want to believe, and I'm not. Like I say, I just don't trust or believe anybody. And I'm not saying anything about these two, but I'm glad they're quoting where they get their data. In fact, what percentage of the country is Black?
Let me find out for you, Tom.
Okay, because I'm a numbers guy. Let's see.
What percentage of America?
Yeah, what percentage of America is Black?
Now, also, what I will
of the USA
advise with kind of doing this search is a lot of people get clumped with Black, right? So you have Caribbeans, you have people who are coming from Africans and stuff like that. But
that sounds racist.
It is. No.
Okay. Yeah. No. I'm just saying. Okay. Okay. So you're going to define what a Black person is to me?
What I'm saying is
it's
that
not a guy from the islands that's Black isn't Black.
So. You got to look at the lineage, just like you have Irish people,
right, but
14.2%.
Okay, so 14.2%. That's an interesting number, and I'll tell you why. I'd be interested because I have some great Black investors in my class that have made. I mean, one of them's made over $1 million in just a pretty short amount of time, and and he's a young guy. I don't think he's 40 yet. And then, and we've got, of course, Can't think of his name.
Which one? I know like three. I know a couple.
No, Garrett. I'm thinking of Garrett at the moment. Garrett's been he's killing it too.
Dan.
He's doing very well. And we got a few. Yeah.
Darius.
Yeah. Darius hasn't bought shit yet.
Darius is learning.
Yeah.
Darius is an armchair investor. But what was your point in mentioning the percentage? What were you going with that?
Because when she starts talking about the data, they play with black data particularly all the time.
For sure.
In ways that make you think one way or another about different subjects. And I don't want to get into all that stuff. But what I do want to talk about is most people, it doesn't matter black or white, they're ignorant in real estate. They're ignorant on how it works in finance. I say the masses are the asses all the time. I'm talking about everybody, and there is a huge opportunity for everybody, not just blacks, but whites, everybody.
Yeah, for sure.
Because most people are ignorant to how to make money in real estate. They are.
And when you say ignorant, he means uneducated, right?
Yeah, I mean, they don't know. They don't know the subject. They don't know.
Exactly.
And even when they're talking right now, my guess is they're talking about retail buying real estate,
absolutely,
buying a house and getting a loan.
Absolutely.
And they talk about areas that are redlined. Well, listen, redlining. If redlining is saying in this zip code we don't want a loan, well, it may be because every store in the area has been torched when there's a riot or looted. There's things that prevent people from wanting to loan. These areas become high risk, and it's not about being black. Now, they are filled with black folks in these areas a lot of times, but it's because in those particular areas, the real estate gets looted and burned down, and people want to have stores there. Yeah. And you see black people out there crying, "Don't do this to our community," and they're begging with other black people that are running and tearing the shit out of the place. Yeah. And so it just is what it is. I mean, that's just a fact.
And I think to add to what you're saying, so for those that don't know, what redlining is it was a practice when with real estate financing, where you would walk into like a financial institution, they would have a giant map behind you, and it would be the map of the city. And they would have the city color coded. It would be blue, yellow, green, and red. Blue was, your Wall Streets, your business district.
It correlates to crime, though.
Right.
Well, correlates to crime.
I think it correlated to money.
Well, I mean, we have those kind of maps already. And I used to buy demographic maps, just like that. I would buy a demographic map, whole city. And it would kind of give me the pockets of higher income. Okay, that's because you want to know where the money is.
Exactly.
Yeah, and but guess what? Where there's no money, that's usually where it's
crime.
There's crime. Absolutely.
Well, and you got to think. Let's break down this thing of crime, right? What I don't wake up with a desire to murder somebody. I don't wake up with a desire to rob somebody. I don't wake up with a desire to kill somebody. Right? If I can make it through life without doing that, I think it's a fair statement to say that most people would, right? If you don't have to kill somebody or you don't have to, harm another human being or their property, you will, right? But what happens is, and this is me speaking from the point of view of the community I grew up in. I grew up in a crime-ridden neighborhood, drugs, all this other stuff. What happens is you get so frustrated with the lack of opportunity that you begin to take from what's close. So it's not.
Well, I think what happens is and I lived in black neighborhood. I was poor. I was poor. Welfare, powdered milk, all that. They call it the welfare wagon. You
welfare,
get huge chunks of this weird looking cheese. And, free lunch in school, all that stuff. I've been through that. And in fact, my next door neighbors, what was their name? I finally almost forgot. Anyways. And that was my introduction to the black community. Was my next door neighbors.
Was she pretty?
First time I got kicked in the balls. Dwayne Johnson. Yeah, his name was Dwayne Johnson. It was
The Rock.
And it wasn't The Rock. No.
Someone asked, "Where'd you buy those demographic maps? I want to find out where the crime is in my."
I can't remember, but they're out there. But yeah, and they'll give you. It just kind of tells you what the income is in these areas, which is directly related to what you. It's like if you're going to build a tract of homes, it gives you an idea of how big a home you're going to build and how fancy a home you're going to build by who is going to buy in that area. There's a lot of good information there for that sort of thing.
But to your point, that's information, right? I don't think there's nothing racial about
when they're in the context I've heard redlining before, they're saying they don't want to loan money in these areas. Well, no shit. Yeah, most people don't want to live there either, to be honest, and it's like when you see, and I've been down to the Staples Center after there was a raid there in LA in different areas. It just ruins. I mean, it's just so disheartening.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? But some people call it home. Yeah. But unfortunately, it's the neighbors. It's your neighbors that are ruining it. Sometimes your own kids that are ruining the area. So, but we better catch a little bit of this, and then we'll come back.
Correct.
So while we see so many people celebrating home ownership, there is still a huge group of people that are unable to or don't have the education or the resources to buy a home. And we need to, our focus needs to be on making sure that we close the wealth gap by advocating for home ownership, educating about the importance of home ownership in different ways to achieve it.
So those are nice feel-good thoughts and all that. And she's a real estate agent?
Yes, the woman is a pretty top-notch real estate agent in Atlanta, and the gentleman is a mortgage broker.
Oh, okay. So those are two people that flourish from
the profession. Yeah.
From if they're in these neighborhoods that they're trying to help people buy in, then they directly would benefit from that. And I get that. But to be honest, I think retail buying is a waste of money for any community, for any black or white. Retail buying is not the ideal way to go. But if they're talking about stereotypical people buying this stuff, it's the retail buying. If you're going to be in a rough area, and I don't even know that they're in a rough area. Do you know?
Oh, those two?
Yeah.
Their markets. So in Atlanta, they go to the more, I think she works in one of the more affluent areas in there. And I think with Matt, he helps anybody. I mean, because he gets paid by the loan. You know what I'm saying? So if you're going to qualify.
But I mean, listen, you'd rather do $1 million loan than
for sure.
$30,000 loan.
Yeah. So appreciate you, Johnny G. But one thing I want to touch on, right? So with redlining, it gets its name because the outline of the community was red, right? But one thing I want to just bring to your attention and just get your feedback on is, a lot of terms that you use in real estate as an investor, they don't understand the history of those terms. So, for example,
I know, and I don't even think it matters.
Well, it doesn't. At the end of the day, right?
I don't understand a lot of the terms that I hear new people use. Hack, and all this other stuff.
Well, but the term I want to talk about is gentrification, right? You hear that term in terms of real estate investing. It's like, oh, you want to get in there when things are being gentrified. You want to get in there when it's gentrified. Okay.
And there's been some opportunities like that.
Right.
I've missed some of them.
Right. But here's what's happening with gentrification from a historical standpoint and from a African American's point of view. A lot of that is displacement, right? So, you're pricing out people through property taxes, because if $1 million homes go up, and you talked about this with the COVID thing, right? When the price of the value of the properties go up, it directly impacts the property tax.
Yeah, I mean, when stuff goes up in value, it parts you from a nicer home because you're paying tax on air.
Yeah,
you're paying tax on air. I mean, but again, look, people want to own their home. Got it. You know what? I went through 5 homes before I bought the home that I wanted to live in. They were just a path to get to where I wanted to be. And, I think it's a mistake to make your, for a lot of people, listen, most people buy their home and they live and die in it.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's it. They buy one investment. That's not the way to go. You got to buy at least 2. You can buy one to live in and the other one to sell.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's where things get lost. And like Richard just wrote, he said one of the things he learned from me was never pay retail.
Exactly.
And that's what but these are retail.
They benefit from the retail buyer.
He's a mortgage guy. She's an agent. They are pretty much in that full retail zone.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, whether it's in a high end area or a low end area, it's retail relative to where it's at.
You want to keep going, or you want to talk about some?
Well, let's get through it. Let's get a little more of what they got to say. I'm going to speed it up a little bit too.
No, I agree with that, man, and I think we got to take it back, to the 1930s of when all this redlining and everything started. And just to kind of give you guys a lay of the land, right? If you're not familiar with redlining, matter of fact, too, so let's put up the map of redlining. Let's show you guys what redlining look, and just listen to what I'm about to say right now, right? So in the 1930s, the FHA, so in the Great Depression, let's start here. Great Depression of the 1920s, early 1930s delivered a real punch to Americans, right? Everybody was getting out of work. The American average income slumped to less than half of what it had been for the past few years, and more than 1 million Americans have faced foreclosures on their home, right? So at the time, Franklin D. Roosevelt was the president, and he established a couple programs out there to stimulate the economy. And one of those programs was the Federal Housing Administration, right? Now, the Federal Housing Administration, aka FHA, was born, and one of the main things of FHA is that FHA refused to insure houses for Black families or even insure homes for white families that were in neighborhoods that were close to the Black ones. So if you're looking at this photo right.
Yeah. So in other words, it wasn't about the blacks. It wasn't, because he said even they didn't insure the white people's houses that were basically in the same neighborhood. Is what he's saying.
Or too close, you know.
Too close. Yeah. In other words, in the same neighborhood. Yeah. In other words, it's not about black. It's about the neighborhood. It's the neighborhood. I'm just telling you, it's the neighborhood. But let's keep listening.
Right here of a map. This is an example of redlining. So everything that you guys are seeing on the screen right now is where FHA would not lend to folks. And if you were in that yellow, those were the quote unquote white neighborhoods. And if you were too close to those redlining areas, FHA would not even insure your mortgage. Go.
Now, why?
Risk.
Yeah. What kind of risk?
I'm thinking like financial risk. Like if
they don't pay their loan.
Yeah. Like
if somebody burns their house down.
They aren't qualified as lenders. Or
I mean, it could be. It may not even be the individual. It may be. Listen.
The collective.
Yeah. Anyways, I'm going to go back to my story in Compton, where Mr. Brown gave me a real tip on real estate.
What did he tell you, Tom?
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that later. but it was a good one. But anyways, I would have to guess that inside these red areas, there's crime, burglarizing, there's property damage, there's all kinds of things that go on. But let's keep listening.
Figure, right? Now, today we use FHA like it's the end-all be-all, but in the 1930s, 40s, this was not the case. So if you can see this map right here, and if many of you haven't seen this before, this is what it looked like, right? So all of those people, Black areas, could not get affordable loans to buy houses, and it was really deemed only for white people. You can take it off the screen right now. So
see, I this is what I don't like about when they make a conversation about white and black. It's the crime in the area. It's the crime. You don't even have to say. They could say these are high crime areas, and they don't like to loan in high crime areas. Now, guess what? You go in the white area, there's not as much crime, so it's a low crime area. Okay, but it doesn't matter if there's a black guy can move in there. A black guy can move into the white area. Yeah, he can still buy. He can still buy a place. He can still get a loan. It's because it's the real estate. It's the area. It's a geographic area. It's not about color. It's about they do coincide, but it has to do with
crime.
It has to do with crime. It has to do with there may be more to it than that too.
Well, and I think to add to that, like you said, I think what causes crime is a lack of jobs.
Well,
I think
people cause crime, but right. I mean, again, let's get through. Let's get through this. Let's let these guys talk.
And it's kind of crazy when you really think about this shit.
Redlining happened, and even today you can see small remnants of redlining still happening in our society. And I want to say that's because deep down, when you think about America knows that home matters, home ownership matters, and when you know that home is wealth, and that home means family, and that owning a home means freedom, what happens is certain people want to take that freedom from you.
Okay, see, I think she's going down a path I'm going to totally disagree with, but. Listen, I don't give a shit what color anybody is, as long as they can make me money. It's a business choice. I don't care who buys my property. I don't care who I buy property from. It does not matter. Business people just see green.
And numbers.
It's numbers. It's just numbers. And so I think that people politicize things and try to make ownership about color and this, that, and the other thing. And believe me, I lived in bad neighborhoods, and guess what? There were some black folks in the neighborhood, and I was there too. And listen, I've done some shit trailer parks when I was a kid too, and it was almost all white. But they were still poor. There was still crime.
Yeah.
It's crime. It's not about color.
Well, and Johnny G made a good point. He says poverty causes crime. Period. Right. And I would agree with that.
I know poverty causes crime for sure. I mean, the bottom line is, if you're in an area that is terrible, you should try to get out of that area.
For sure.
Try to go get a job in a good area.
Yeah.
Nobody, again, I just don't think this is about color. It's about crime.
And money.
Well, crime. I mean, crime. Listen, I go to Mexico. I've been in Mexico many times where there is poverty, and they're not killing each other.
Say it again. Say what you say. What you say?
I've been in Mexico plenty of times. Poor communities.
Yeah.
Poor, very poor.
Yeah. And
nobody's robbing you. Nobody's stealing from you. They're selling chiclets at the street, all this sort of thing. So it's not just poverty. Mm-hmm. There's a criminal element that's probably the number one thing. It's the crime. It's the crime in the area. Safety. I don't mind being in a poor area, but if I have to worry about my throat being slit or getting shot or robbed, that brings it to a whole different level. And I think that those red areas they're referring to are high crime.
Well, and if I can add one more thing to what you just said, I think when you compare and contrast like a crime area or a poor area with crime and a poor area without crime, and you talk about going to Mexico and all this stuff, the only reason I think there is not crime there is because of culture, right? I think values, family, right?
All of it.
If we know and love one another, whatever, we're not going to harm one another. But if we're all kind of
listen, in Mexico, everybody. I mean, I can't say everybody. There's some bad hombres. Bad hombres over there too.
Come on, Tom. That is racist.
Anyways, but no. The bottom line is it's the people. It's the people. It's the people in the area that make it scary. It's people that do the crime, and that's why I say it's very difficult. And the black community's got some real problems there, and. Because when there's just because there is there's whatever there's a news issue
a headline
a headline and then it's like, okay, we don't like the outcome, let's raid the store, let's go destroy the only convenience store in our neighborhood. You know what I mean?
I'm laughing because what he's saying is very true. Right?
Oh, it is. It's 100% true.
You burn down.
This is why I don't invest in black neighborhoods. Or you can say it black, but high crime.
Yeah, high crime.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So for you, why not? As an investor, speaking from an investor point of view.
I can't even imagine what insurance is going to try to tell me. When you try to imagine buying a commercial property that's been burned out twice before. You're a high risk.
3,000.
In fact, they're probably not even going to give me the loan to buy the property. Okay.
Wow.
Okay. And it's not because I'm white. It's because why would you buy in this neighborhood? They burn the town down every time, Black Lives Matter gets up there and screams about, somebody getting beat up.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. And so the politicizing of it destroys fair argument.
Yeah.
Was one of the hard things. It's terrible. But here, we better promise we get through this. Let's get through this thing with you.
And we have to, as people, start recognizing that we need to focus on owning property and owning real estate because we won't make any more land, and stop thinking about, I want to rent, I want to live in the city. You can buy a property in a location that you do not live in, because when it comes to the data, look at how many out of white and black households, when they own homes, researchers have found that the home ownership gap is huge. It's about 21 percentage points. And it has remained that constant throughout the entire 40-year period where we haven't moved the needle. I don't know about you all, but I'm disturbed by that statistic. And it brings us back to, we have the power. This podcast gives you the power. It gives you the tools and the resources to own property.
Facts. That is a fact. We're giving you all the resources. We're giving you the information. And like Kiana said, we haven't moved the needle at all, right? What our people have fought through from the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, all the segregation, all the housing discrimination. Let's talk about appraisals, racist, at times also. All of these things, our people fought through, they marched for. Right. And now we take all of that stuff for granted. And it's pretty sad, that we forget where we came from because, we live in a social media world. It's a microwave society that we live in. And people forget shit. You forget what you posted this morning, in all honesty, let alone something that happened 50, 60 years ago. Right. So I think it's very important that, number one, we don't forget FHA, how that program came into the world and how it was introduced and what the law was. The law has said it can't.
And listen, I don't even care about that stuff, about the history on some of this stuff. It doesn't matter. What I would be more interested in, what they really should take a look at, Kiana and MG, is take a look at those areas inside those red lines and see how much they've gone up in value over the years. Okay? Because they probably haven't gone up very much. they're probably not a very good place to buy. In fact, I mentor people on how to buy real estate. I've made tons of money in it. And I would not tell them to buy in those areas. I would say, don't buy in those areas. Go, she did say people can buy in other areas. And that's probably a really good idea. And, in fact, the guy that probably owns property in those areas probably feels stuck. He wishes he could get rid of it, but he can't get rid of the
Nobody will
property.
buy it. No buyers.
Nobody will buy it. And it's just very difficult. And so Ozevlo, what's he saying?
And I don't even want to too much attention on what he's saying, because what I want you guys to be mindful of is we're not. I don't want y'all attacking anybody for their opinion, right? We're having an honest discourse, and we're coming from two different worldviews, right? Yeah. Tom was born in '62.
No, listen, don't apologize to the audience. We're having a conversation. It doesn't matter. I don't apologize for anything. I know listen, I've lived my life. But what I'm saying is, I think it would be a disservice for somebody to buy in some of those areas because, like I told you, you guys know the story. A lot of you know, not everybody. I was looking at properties for sale in Compton. This is back in the 80s. Okay, and this is a rough area. All the bars, you could drive on the street. Everything's barred. We noticed just about every car was filled with black folks, not white folks. We stuck out like a sore thumb. We'd been in to look at one property that was for sale, and it was pretty ugly. It was pretty rough. There was needles. There was, it was kind of scary. And we pulled out of there, and we decided we were going to get a soda. We pulled it to this, what used to be an old gas station. Now it was like a liquor store. And we pulled up, parked, and as we're starting to walk toward the doors of this old gas station, and they had the bars that were unfolded, opened. They close them up at night, but they're open. And this little old black guy, he jumps out, and he's walking twice the speed towards us as we are to him. And he doesn't want us coming in the store. He stops us before we get in the store. And he said, "You boys must be lost."
What you doing here?
Like, what are you doing here? Exactly. And I said, "Hi, how you doing?" We introduce, shake hands, we talk, and I tell him, "Yeah, we're looking at buying this, property at a tax sale over." He goes, listen. He goes, "My best friends are white." This is what he said. And his name was Mr. Brown, by the way. And he says, "My best friends are white." He goes, "I was a fireman. I was a fireman for many years." And he goes, "I invested here. My best friends, they bought in the white neighborhoods." And he said, "I'm telling you right now," and he looked me right in the eye and he said, "Don't buy black." He said, "Don't buy black or your money turns black." And what he's referring to is buying inside what I would describe as these red line areas where there's high crime. The values don't go up. Like he said, his buddies are millionaires that bought in the white neighborhoods. His money has turned to shit. And he said, and this is what he said. He said, "They're millionaires." He goes, "And I'm still working in the liquor store." That's what he said.
Well, that's a beautiful story. And I love that story because once again, I know Tom says
you got to consider the source. There isn't a better source.
And, you got to understand Tom's vantage point. It's about money. It's about dollars. It's about cents and all this other stuff, right?
It's about common sense.
About common sense, right? So what's interesting about what you said is, once again, even in that story, they're politicizing color, which it had nothing to do with it, right?
Because that's what I'm saying. Well, who?
Like the guy that says don't buy black because if you buy black,
he meant this neighborhood.
Yeah,
it's all black.
It's just crime. But to your point, based on what you said earlier, the color really isn't. It's the crime. It's the risk. It's the
right. But he didn't. He wasn't. He was saying this area,
this neighborhood.
He was saying this neighborhood.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, and that's why when you think about these real estate terms, and people just say this stuff without knowing the history of it, but when you hear location, that's from redlining. It's not about.
I don't know if it's from redlining, but it's relative, I guess, in as much as you don't want to buy it. Listen, some people, you can make money in any area, but I would never buy in an area that doesn't seem to have any normal growth. Yeah.
Well,
and because you're too reliant on the people. I mean, it's like, let me tell you it this way. This is another good way to put it. When you go look at schools for your kids, right? When you go look at schools, you're not really looking at the structure. You're not looking at the building. You're looking at the kids. Are the kids good kids? Are their kids bad kids?
Wow.
Is their ass crack showing? and in the classroom, You know, if they look rough, you know what I mean? You're not going to put them in there. You're not going to put them in there. Yeah.
That caught me off guard.
Yeah.
Well,
you kind of go, you look for schools that have good kids in them.
Okay, so they're bringing up two things, right? And I think this is awesome, right? So Kai, Elite Clinical Research. This is Kai. He's in the mentorship. Kai does really well in what you would call one of these redline communities. So he goes, I disagree strongly about buying in black neighborhoods. Those neighborhoods are often in the best locations, right near downtown of any metropolitan city. Those same properties are worth millions now.
I agree. In the gentrification
That's
situation,
what I'm saying, right?
I would agree.
So what gentrification is,
and Kai's black, by the way.
and Kai's black, right? What gentrification is, and it's what America has done to make it one of the greatest countries. It's a land grab, right?
Well, let me explain something. I have a perfect example. So I had an area that it had a lot of black folks in it, had a lot of white folks too, poor, and rough area. I remember that's where they put the community cable company, and we used to go down there. We could borrow cable equipment down there for cheap, and so we'd go down there to borrow their studio, that sort of thing. But they put the community center in the worst neighborhood in the area, but that was worth it. We go.
So funny.
So, but I would drive through and I would see trash 3 feet high in some of the yards on the way out there. And it's like, geez, man, what's going on? You know?
Yeah.
But whatever, it just is what it is. Well, also, as you're there, airplanes would be coming over like so loud you can't even talk because the airport was very nearby. And so one of the things that ruined this area was the fact that the airplanes, it was right in the landing path.
Yeah.
And as it comes over, it's just blowing out everybody's ears. And guess what? They moved the airport. And as soon as they moved the airport, now suddenly everybody's like, boom, coming in and saying, hey, you know what? And what happened is like, say on that red line, you got red and then you got yellow. Well, that red line started to get pushed in.
Yeah.
Because it was like, hey, we'll just crawl into this neighborhood. So they started buying like right next door to that line. And then the line kept moving.
Yeah.
And pretty soon everything was bought up. Now the place is beautiful. There's not trash 3 feet high in the yards. And, as far as color goes, I don't know color-wise. I can't say I've been through there to say for sure, but I'm going to guess it's changed.
I can tell you it's not black people in there.
Yeah. Well, but what
that.
I'm saying is one of the reasons it was a poor neighborhood or not a desirable place to live is because the planes just barely cleared the rough top. Noise pollution was horrible, but it was a cheap place to live because of that. And so a lot of people live there that don't make as much money, and I'm sure there's a lot of blacks that fall into that category. And that's just a fact.
Well,
it's just a fact.
What you point out is affordability. And, one thing that's very interesting is I know...
Elite's right on that.
Yeah, I know you're a huge fan of former President Trump, right? You say, he did great things for business, which you are absolutely correct about, right?
Sure.
But what's funny is when you look into the history, a lot of Trump's policies were just remixed policies from previous presidents, right? So, for example,
I'm not going to get into politics with you.
I'm about to touch it to real estate, right?
Better keep it
so,
in real estate. Yeah.
Where I'm going with this is the opportunity zones. So a lot of times when people ask you about opportunity zones, you go, I don't know, right?
Well, I'd say that, and I don't even pretend to know that much about opportunity zones. I haven't needed them, but they seem to be areas that you normally wouldn't want to invest in.
These red line communities.
Yeah.
Right? Is that fair to say?
And so maybe you do. You buy on the border of the yellow.
Yeah.
Into the red.
Yeah.
Maybe that makes sense. And so Elite Kai says, I strongly disagree about buying in black neighborhoods. Okay. And I understand, but there's varying degrees. I mean, when you say black neighborhood, it's too blanket. You follow me? It's a little bit too blanket.
Why though?
Well, because like you said, I know Kai's done pretty well renting properties in those areas, but let me put it this way. I've seen, it just depends on the crime. It depends on the crime. I'm guessing Elite, that when you say those neighborhoods are often the best locations right near downtown in any of them, and I agree, and I've seen that. I've seen it where they've gotten better in those areas, okay? Like New York City is actually one, but that was Giuliani. Guess what? Giuliani came in and he kicked all the drugs out. He kicked all the drug dealers out. He got rid of the crime. He got rid of all the bad elements, and that's what made New York City so much nicer. In fact, if you go to the outside of New York City, there's like Ronkonkoma and places in New Jersey, just outside of New York. They hate Giuliani. Why do you hate Giuliani? Because he
pushed the crime out there.
He pushed all the criminals out of the city, and now they're in our city. And so it lays it upon each city to take responsibility for their own city.
Well, even some issues we had, because I know you talk about how not only crime but how homelessness can affect you as an investor, right?
Well, and again, that gets back to the politicizing stuff again. Some people wonder, why the hell do we have all these, folks under the bridges and all over the place? Is that a safe place for them? Can't you just go buy 160 acres outside of town, put in 100 shitters and showers, and let them live out there in tents? It's better than living where they're living.
Yeah, for sure.
And then they got their legs dangling over the curb into the streets, and you got all kinds of problems with that, because it's not about. I don't give a shit about the people.
Yeah,
there's money. There's huge federal money that the councils can get by. They get federal money. It's about the money. It's always about the money.
Yeah. And two more things I'll mention.
Oh, so Elite says, yeah, see, that's where I was going, Elite. You like, I'm guessing you don't buy in the heart of the trouble. You're probably not going to buy next to the burned out Walmart, right, Kai? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you will buy in an area that's somewhere, it's almost
adjacent.
It's almost like, it's almost like a hot and cold, the range, it goes from green to yellow to orange to red being the worst part, and, and green being like the beginning of where it's good.
Yeah.
And as you go in, you can come in a little ways. And that's how, a lot of people say, I can deal with a little bit of, being a little bit close to the element, as long as I'm also in between tough element and less crime.
Well, and you know what's funny about what you just said, and it reminds me of a story, and you talked about the Compton story. So what year, if you had to be specific to what year it was, what year would you say it was? 84?
When I was in Compton?
Yeah, 85.
It was right in the middle of the 80s. So
okay.
85 would be the guess. It could be one couple years one way or the other.
Okay.
Definitely lower, probably between 85 and 81.
So what I want to add to what Tom's story, right?
That was smart. No, it wasn't 85. I was too smart in 85 to go there by then.
So you're at 84?
Well, 85, that's when I probably made my first million, around that time.
Wow.
So it was somewhere below that.
Okay,
right?
82. Okay.
Probably 82.
All right. So just to give some context to those that may not know, right? Compton in the 80s, right, was one of the crack epidemic in the 80s. That was one of the hotspots, right? So when he's talking about seeing needles and seeing drugs and seeing all this stuff, right? Historically, that's what's happening at that time. Yeah. Right?
Let me give you an idea. The businesses that you would see in a normal community, CPA, dentist, whatever, bars on their windows, bars on their doors, buzzers on their doors, and you go to the door and you hit the buzzer. I remember this little black girl was sitting there, and I'm like, I go, hit the buzzer. I wanted to ask him something about the neighborhood. I just want to say hello. And she kept looking. She'd look out of the corner.
Yeah.
But she was ignoring me.
Yeah.
But there was her boss said, do not answer the door.
That's so funny.
Period.
They thought you were a cop. Is that what they thought?
They thought that's an interesting assessment.
Right? Yeah. You're wearing a detective blazer right now.
Yeah, well, believe me, I wasn't then. No, for sure I wasn't then. I was purposely dressed down in my casual wear. But no, they might have thought I was a cop, but the bottom line is they probably thought, you ain't got an appointment. We ain't talking to you. You know what I mean? Well, and believe me, if I was black, they may not have answered the door too, because they, who knows what they would have been thought.
I remember growing up, there was a restaurant in Chicago called Harold's, and they had this bulletproof, Lazy Susan. And that's how you would get your food. You would order it through this bulletproof glass. Yeah. They'll give you your chicken and spin it around, and you would take your chicken, right? And, as a kid, you think this is normal. But then you go downtown, and you're like, KFC doesn't do this. Yeah. Or, some of these other establishments don't have bulletproof glass at their restaurants, right? Yeah. Or bars. My granddad, his house, literally, to this day, it has bars on the windows in the basement.
Well, you'll go into liquor stores and you'll see the counter almost comes up to your chin.
Yeah.
And they're standing on a 1-foot platform. Yeah. The reason is they don't want people to hop over the counter and rob them.
Yeah.
And plus there's more room for a shotgun underneath and that sort of thing. No, seriously. I've got a similar setup we're putting in right now for one of my tenants.
And one last thing I'll add is that one thing that's very interesting, and one of my favorite comedians is Dick Gregory. He passed away, but he was brilliant. But if you research the Highway Act of 1956, I don't know if you knew this, Tom.
I don't. But hey, real quick. Hey, Johnny G, don't go away. I want to follow up on your question, on what your comment.
So if you look at the Highway Act of 1956, right,
Yeah.
where they built highways to try to stimulate the economy for transportation, all this stuff. If you pay attention to how highways are designed, do you realize they go over black communities or poor communities? Like if you think about literally where highways go, right?
Yeah.
They split communities. There's usually a good side of the highway and a bad side, right?
Yeah. I don't know why. It always seemed like the east side's the rougher side, but that's
Right?
not true in New York.
Right. So that was by design. And
Sometimes.
when you talk about, because you talk about it, you dealt with this eminent domain, where the government takes the land back from.
Well, they buy it. Yeah. And so, I mean, I my guess is if they can take a train from point A to point B, you don't want to probably take it through the capital. You're going to take it through the outskirts or around the side.
Wow, interesting.
Because the real estate gets cheaper because they have to buy it.
Noise
still.
pollution, right?
Well, not just that, but they got to buy it. They got to buy it. And maybe they don't. Maybe sensitivity to, but I mean, listen, they have a thing called the Big Dig. I think it's in Boston.
Yeah.
And they dug an enormous tunnel right underneath the heart of town. I mean, straight through, huge. I think that was where the Big Dig is.
But you said you had something to say to Johnny G.
Yeah, so Johnny G said, Johnny says, I am a mortgage broker and the turn down rate is much higher for African Americans than whites. Explain that to me. Explain why, because there's a reason, and it's not the color of their skin. The government really needs to find a way to help minority communities achieve home ownership. So I want to know why, Johnny.
So
Because I can tell you right now, if you have a high credit score and two guys make the same money, I don't think the color of your skin matters.
I'm gonna tell you what it is, Tom. And Johnny G.
Let Johnny answer. He's a mortgage broker.
Well, let me allow
go
me
ahead.
to give my
Sure.
perspective while we wait for Johnny. If me and you make the same income, same credit score, same neighborhood we're trying to invest in, right? How can you determine the difference between me and you?
I wouldn't even see it. If I was a loan processor, I don't think I would see your color.
Okay, I'm gonna tell you. This is the name, right?
Go ahead, I'm listening.
Your name is Tom, right?
Oh, yeah. Guess what? My middle name is Lincoln.
But listen, my name is Darius.
Yeah.
My middle name is Ramon.
Yeah.
Right. So it was it's his just like we see Kiana, right? If you see that on an application, are you gonna think, oh, that's a young white girl?
No, that's bullshit.
I'm telling you,
No,
that's what
you're
it
wrong.
is.
You're 100% wrong.
telling you.
Listen, the person would be fired on the fucking spot. You
Not if
can't.
they don't say
no, they go, no.
All right.
Maybe there was a long time ago.
Yesterday?
But no, bullshit. What's going to happen is if you say everything's the same, bullshit.
So why do you think?
No, tell me something. Why would you not accept a qualified tenant that you're going to make money on? Why would you turn down somebody you're going to make money from?
They do it at jobs.
No, but why would you not? Why would you listen? You want money. You want to make money. Why would you turn down a loan from somebody that's qualified?
Because of if you're not as educated or sophisticated as you are.
No, fuck, I'm not educated.
But you're sophisticated.
I don't even know if that's
You're
true.
sophisticated, Tom.
Okay,
You
but
know
what
a
I'm
lot
saying
more.
is it doesn't matter. You said all things being equal.
Yes.
Okay, well then I'm not any more sophisticated than
Me, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But if we're looking at paper, and because that's all we're looking at, right? As a loan originator, I'm just looking at a piece of paper. I'm looking at your paper. I'm looking at my paper. Oh, okay. All right. Same thing. Okay. What's the difference?
Yeah. This is nice. I like what Garrett has to say because it supports me.
What is? I know, right? Of course. And then Elite says it supports me. So,
Yeah.
but and Josh, capitalism does not see color, and you're absolutely right.
And I believe, I'm with Josh on that. And believe me, that's been my experience. And listen, I've hired a lot of people. I had a lot of people work for me. And I remember I've got all the diversity covered, believe me, in all the years I've hired people. But I remember I hired a black guy that was, he would go in and he would take a lot of bathroom breaks. and when you walked in, the bathroom smelled like whiskey. Okay. Anyways, so he didn't last long, but I was afraid he was going to cut his freaking hands off. But anyways, I don't buy for a second as an experienced businessman.
For sure.
I don't give a shit. Capitalism has no color. It doesn't matter.
Capitalism.
They don't make any money. They don't make any money saying no. You don't say no to somebody that's qualified.
So if capitalism doesn't see color, does socialism see color?
Does socialism see color? I don't know what to tell you. But I want to get back to Elite on there. So Elite says it's totally not BS. Okay, so here's why I think your perspective might be skewed, Kai, is if you're talking about, you might be confusing, maybe not, and you may have something down that I don't know about, Elite or Kai, is sometimes, let me put it this way, I've been turned down for a loan before.
For sure.
And it had nothing to do with anything other than they were either nervous about the real estate or they were nervous maybe about me when I was younger. Mm-hmm. But even more recently, I was looking at buying a place and they go, Tom, we don't like to finance convenience stores. And they go, and don't try to tell us you're putting your business in there, because they know that's what I'm going to tell you. And but
because they get robbed a lot, or what's the thought process?
They said, well, yeah, they go, the incidence of theft inside the convenience store is off the charts. And that's why if you go into a convenience store or liquor store, and a lot of times, you have some Pakistani guy, and it sounds like I'm, whatever.
That is
but
racist,
it's true.
Tom.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's true. Yeah. I got a guy named Abu. I got to go talk to later today. No, I know. I'm helping this guy. He owns a liquor store. And he stands like this behind the register. Mm-hmm. He never hardly moves. Mm-hmm. And somebody else might run it, but I mean, he doesn't want security cameras. He is the eyes of the store on everything. Mm-hmm. In other words, there's high incidence of theft. Mm-hmm. And that's why the people in restaurant business and in those kinds of businesses, really, liquor stores, convenience stores, whatever, you have to stand behind the register and watch the money, because you get robbed blind otherwise, or people are stealing in the back. And a lot of times, people walk in, owner follows that person around the store. You have to. It's horrible.
Well, and to your point, I remember when I walk, I don't get my gas from convenience stores, right? Because I hate the way they make me feel as a customer, right? Every time I walk in, they make me feel like I'm a thief, right? The convenience store staff. Right.
So you might have an incident. And listen, I'll give you an example. And I've seen racism before firsthand. I remember. I thought it was pretty rude. I was in a Dallas mall. This is probably 45 years ago or something like that, a long time ago, and this gal, nice looking black girl, probably 25, 30, taking a break, sitting down at a little table in the mall. And this woman come over and said, "You can't sit here unless you're having some food." And I thought that was pretty rude. And mm-hmm. They didn't say, I think I had some food, mm-hmm. but maybe that was the policy or not. The way it struck me, I thought, I would have given her a piece of my mind.
Yeah.
If I was her, I was a kid.
And where I was going with that, with the convenience store thing, is I hate going to like 7-Eleven and any convenience store, because they always make me feel like I'm a thief, and I know I'm not, right? But what I realized is if a white guy walks in behind me, or a Mexican guy, or whatever, they treat them the exact same, right? So it's not a color thing; it's a risk thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. And see, but I'm glad you said that, because you just don't know. You don't know.
That's why I go to grocery stores. I go to well-lit.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. There's just places that are in high crime areas, and and there's incidents of theft like crazy.
Well, I wanted you to speak on Garrett's comment, because you said you feel like he agrees with you, and I want you to go first to talk about.
I don't know. Let me read. So Garrett wrote, "Black people completely understand what Tom is saying. As soon as any black person has kids and gets a decent job, they move out of these neighborhoods to avoid crime and have access to good schools." I totally agree with that. And I've seen also people that have moved out of rough areas, and that were actually even going from a HUD home to a HUD home. Mm-hmm. In fact, I'll give you an example. Antelope Valley, Lancaster, this is like 35 years ago, they got overbuilt, and then the economy took a dump, and I can't remember the exact details, it's been a long time. And anyways, there was still plenty of people that needed these HUD homes, needed government assistance. Well, they finally took all these new homes that couldn't be sold, and they started putting them on the market. And so people were told down in LA, they say, listen, if you want to live 60 miles away from here, we have homes. And they're like, oh, you know what? This is my chance to get my kids out of the gangs. And they went up there and got government assistance on those homes. And unfortunately, some of these people brought the gangs out there because it got worse. Because again, it brought in the kind of low income people that aren't working. And there's crime that goes, and I'm talking white and black.
Well, so from my perspective, what Garrett is saying, right? So, and here's where I was trying to talk about that 14% black, right? The problem with that 14% is it's not created equal. You have people coming from countries who have an actual country to go to. Then you have people who are descendants of like American slavery who don't know where they're from, right? I don't know where my people are from, right? So what happens with what he's saying is you're absolutely right, right? If you have kids and you get a good job, you don't want them around crime. But what happens is now you're taking that income out of our community, right? That income is going...
No, he's not. He's making room for somebody else to take his place.
To do what? Work at the...
Well, no, but what I'm saying is if Garrett or somebody else moves their kids, they make their money. And that's the thing is people need to be rewarded on merit.
For sure, absolutely.
That's why you can't put a damn HUD project in a nice neighborhood.
For sure.
It's just it's like a cancer.
Yeah.
Anyways, but just because he moves out, it just lets somebody else that's on the it's a stepping stone.
But the challenge, and I'm not picking on you, Garrett, I'm just making an observation, right, from my perspective. The challenge with a lot of people in Garrett's position is that once they leave the community, they never come back. They never give the information back.
Yeah, nobody's going to go backwards. Nobody should go backwards.
I disagree with that because so say Garrett moves out, I move in his house. How do I get to Garrett's neighborhood if I don't know what he did? Like, how do I become Tom if I don't know what Tom did?
He's not closing the door behind him. He's just leaving. Listen, you think I want to live in the trailer park that I lived in? I'm not going back to my trailer park. I'm just saying, you have to be motivated and self-sufficient, and you've got to want it. You've got to want it. If you want to listen, anybody can be rich. I know anybody can be rich, and I say it only because I started with so little, and I've been on the welfare wagon and all that stuff, and wore the shitty clothes, and very uncomfortable lifestyle as a kid in school. It was very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable, and there's just how it was. And like Garrett says, he says my bank loves me, and this Real Deal Fund says that bank loves him. And that's why I say the capitalism it doesn't know color. It really doesn't. I mean, there might be some rare instances, but I just can't even imagine it. And the way the laws are today, I mean, you like I said, when you think two people side by side the same, there's going to be some detail in it. One guy might be buying in a rougher neighborhood than the other.
But if we're buying the same property, though.
If you're buying the properties that are next door to each other, you're not going to have that problem.
But
there's just no way.
Say me and you are competing for the same deal.
I know, but you got to remember, the guy that's writing your loan, he makes money on you getting the loan. He doesn't give a shit. He doesn't care. If you go belly up, he doesn't care. His deal is done with here. The risk is taken by the bank. You follow me?
Well, no, and the only reason I'm challenging you on this is because I got a chance to talk to the president of a bank, right? And I worked my way, all the way to the top of the bank. And this guy was like, in order to do business with us, you have to have perfect credit, and you have to have, it was like the bar was so high to do business with him.
Because he is a no-risk lender, and that's fine. There's a place for those guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but when I was talking to him, he was like, you can have no blemishes on your credit. You have to have made every payment since you were ever alive. And I was like, okay, well, that's not my story, right? But I was thinking, I was like, okay, I don't know if you know this, so I'm just telling you this because I don't know if you know this. In our community, right, there's so little income that any opportunity.
So when you say our community, you're referring to
the blacks. No,
you're referring to a poor black area, or what are you referring to? I want to be clear.
Yeah. I can only speak from my experience. Okay. Right. So I'm speaking from a black.
Where did you live?
I lived in a city outside of Chicago. So I lived in Harvey, Illinois.
Harvey.
Right?
Okay.
Harvey. So Harvey used to be a steel town. and it was the black neighborhood to go to in the 70s and 80s. No, 70s, right? 80s, crack came, right? The industry left, and the whole town was employed by this industry. So once the industry left, all the income left, all the jobs.
That's
left.
happened to Detroit.
For sure, right? You talk about manufacturing jobs all the time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it's the same story in all these different communities, right? Because an industry can leave a big city, but because it's not this singular industry, that city will be fine, unless it's a ghost town, right? But what I kind of experienced is that, like, it's different. I kind of lost my train of thought where I was going. What was I talking about before? What I was saying about?
I don't know. You're talking about. I felt you were going to make an excuse about something.
No, hey, look, that's what you were thinking. I usually write my notes down, but what was I saying?
No, you were talking about that. You were talking about that in this community, something you experienced that.
Y'all remind me what I was talking about.
Yeah. I mean, but it sounded like you were referring to.
Oh, that's where I was going. Okay, I got it. So
the rich banker, the banker that only liked the pure people.
Yeah, the good credit, right? Yeah. So in my community growing up, right, if my mom is 19 when she had me, right, she's figuring it out. She ruins her credit in the process of figuring it out, right? And she moves. She's trying to give us a better life. She's trying to do what Garrett's talking about, but she can't move. She can't make that one leap. She has to make like 3 or 4 to get to where Garrett is. So what she does, though, is because she can't get the credit in her name or the light bill in her name because the deposit is so high because she's so risky, she'll get it in my name.
Sure.
Right?
I mean, that's not a color thing.
Right?
Yeah.
It's an income thing.
So
right?
you ruin your income.
Right.
Yeah. You ruin your credit.
Now, without me being able to defend myself, I have to depend on my mom doing the right thing. And I'm not picking on my mom, whatever. She didn't do this to me in real life. This is the story of my community. So what happens is that by the time I'm 18 and I become of legal age to own real estate, my credit is jacked, right?
Because your mom ruined it for you?
Right? Yeah, this didn't happen to me. This is a hypothetical mom,
okay,
right?
Yeah.
So
Well, no. So, but what I'm saying is, yeah. I mean, I don't know how a kid gets, unless you're talking about being 19 years old and you can get in with a lower deposit because you haven't had credit, so you don't have any blemishes on your credit. Sure, I can understand. Listen, people ruin each other's credit that way all the time.
Yeah,
that's why I don't co-sign for anybody when I was younger. So you screwed your credit, you ain't gonna screw mine up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but what happens is, so now I'm in a position where I can't get finance for a home, right? But I can get financing for a car, or I can pay a higher deposit for an apartment, or I can get qualified. If I come into a financial emergency and I can't get a loan from a traditional sense, I can go to a payday lender, right? And all these kind of predatory...
you got high risk pawn shop money, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Right? And it gets super high. And what happens is I already can't afford my emergency, but now I'm borrowing money from people who are charging me like these.
But whose fault is it?
It is, okay.
It's your fault and your mom's fault in this situation.
Correct. So, well, how is it
your mom fucked her credit up, right?
So,
it's her fault.
But how is it my fault? And I'm not being a victim. I'm just talking this through.
It's your mom's fault.
Okay. So
if she pushed you to use your credit and she ruined your credit, it's your mom's fault. So
if I'm in that situation, because that's a lot of black people are in that situation, right? So, we can talk about these things and they sound good, but in practice, my starting point is a lot different than somebody who didn't have to go through that. Not to say it's an excuse. It just makes the game a little bit harder, right? The bat's a little heavier.
Yeah, everybody has different walls that they run into along the way. They got to climb over. And listen, it's nobody's. Let me put it this way. It's unfortunate, but it's not. It's not something it's not an obstacle that's so overwhelming you can't pull yourself out of it.
And that's that. I just wanted to get to that point to where you say that, right? Because I think what happens is a lot of black people become unmotivated, or they lose the will to compete or the will to fight because of all these obstacles. But like you said, it's not a race thing. It's more of like and I know you hate this word, but it's like your mindset of will you allow that obstacle?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's and we've talked about this a little bit. There's the one thing in common with poor communities, and black too, is fatherless. There's no fathers. and there's there's no good role models, and so you got to find a role model outside of that. You go look at somebody that you admire that has what you want. And that's what I always was gravitated to seeing and was interested in talking to people that had what I wanted. That's the best thing ever. That's a role model, right?
For sure.
And I think that you're doing some of that now.
Absolutely.
And
That's why I took this opportunity, because like when I saw Tom needed help in an area where I have expertise, and I saw that he had knowledge in an area I have been trying to figure out for a long time, it's like, okay, how can I make myself as valuable as possible to this man long enough to where I can benefit from what he has and he can benefit from what I have. So for me, I'm built different though. Like instead of selling drugs, I sold candy. So, but man, Zev, you really heavy handed with that.
Yeah,
man.
just ignore him.
Yeah. So, but I say all this because this conversation is necessary, and I think Josh is of the standpoint, because he says, but that isn't your starting point. You just made up a hypothetical scenario. Actually, Josh, that is my scenario, right? I just didn't want to sound like a victim, right? So I presented like, I have a friend who did this, but it's my situation. But that does not stop me from learning what Tom learns, because Tom is teaching me that there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one way to get finance. Your first deal was owner finance.
Well, that's why, again, and it doesn't matter if you had credit or not.
For sure.
Yeah.
So by learning these things, like I was like, oh, I didn't even know this existed, right? So then exposure becomes another thing, right? It's like, because I asked Tom one time when I first started working, I said, Tom, why is it that schools don't teach what you know? And Tom, he be saying stuff like a rapper sometimes. He goes, not you saying, oh my bad, Miss Her, life is tough for show. Not for show. You can, but Tom said, if teachers knew what I knew, they wouldn't be teachers. And I was like, wow.
That's probably true. Yeah. I don't remember saying it, but
yeah,
that's probably
I was
true.
like, wow, that is very powerful.
Well,
And
I mean, it's like almost anything you go to school for. Until you get in the field and actually do it, you can learn carpentry in a book.
For sure.
But you still don't know how to shoot a nail gun or use a tape. I mean, they got to have hands-on.
For sure.
And that's what a lot of teachers don't have.
Yeah.
And so Zev Love, let's listen to Zev Love. He's pretty negative.
He says, waste of
time
talking
to Tom.
He is stuttering and
I don't stutter. But
spluttering.
I do some spluttering maybe.
He said, I don't know anything about racism. Typical MAGA.
Yeah.
He was probably rushing to try to sell some courses.
Yeah. So, Zev, just so you know, there's people in here that have made a lot of money in real estate. Garrett is one. Kai is one. That's Elite Channel. Josh has made money. So when you come in here and you spout that stuff, I mean, you're just like invisible to us because you don't know what you're doing. You're one of these people that is going to be negative, and you know what? Just let that comfort you through the rest of your days. I don't care. I don't care about anybody that's negative, anybody that doesn't want to try or that just writes stuff off and everything's bad and wants to play victim. Listen, enjoy it. If that's what you want to do, enjoy it. But you know what? We don't have to play that game.
Well, and I think the danger, and I don't want to pick on you, Zev, but I think the danger in what you're doing is, okay, say for example, me and Tom have different political views, right? That's not gonna get in the way of me learning what he has to teach, right? Because
I don't worry about being politically correct.
For sure.
I just don't. And I have a lot more experience in life than you because you're young.
Absolutely.
And so, of course, I'm going to say how I feel. And anyways, listen, I can tell you right now, two people could be extreme opposites politically, and they would come up with a solution because they don't have the temptations and the money bribing them to do things and all the monetary stuff that the politicians have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where, and that's a big thing. There's a big money in politics on the back end. So
Herbert says our education only teaches us to be employees, an employee.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. And that's the truth. And hey, we got to cut it short here. We've been talking a long time, and it's Valentine's Day. Got to get out of here. Valentine's Day, guys. Valentine's Day.
And Black History Month. No, go ahead.
Yeah, yes, and Black History Month. Most important of all. Anyways, so, hey, MG and Kiana, nice job. And we'll come back to this thing and finish the last 2 minutes of it or something. maybe watch a little more of these folks. Again, like I say, these seem like genuine, nice people that are, have an interest in, informing people, and they may not be, how a lot of us feel, but if we have different perspectives, we have different experiences. And believe me, I don't know if you guys have ever seen, a lot of times you'll be disillusioned. You go in thinking that things are about this, and then once you get in and you find out, you go, oh, it's not at all what I thought.
And this is the last comment we'll say. Oh, I'm sorry. This comment by Yamin, I can't say your name, but it says, the bottom line is resources have purposely been withheld in the majority of Black communities. That's why I watch the most informative show, and that's the Flip Anything USA show, hosted by Tom McKay and hilarious Darius.
Yeah. Is that what she means? I think that's what she means. I hope she means this show.
I know, right?
Or maybe she means the other show.
I know, right? We're gonna take it though.
Yeah. So again, I don't know. I want to say something here, Yamlin. When you say withheld, I have a problem with people saying things are withheld. Everything is out there. Everything. You've got so many sources of information, and there's nobody stopping you from getting to it, because it's as simple as a keystroke now. You can go through, you can get information on absolutely anything you want to learn about. So I think everybody can pretty much learn themselves out of a hole if they're in one.
Let me just ask you one question.
Sure.
So just to challenge you and push back on what you said.
Okay, remember, we're wrapping up though. Go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. I got you, Yaman. Okay. So you told us before that you wrote your book in the 90s, right? But you didn't release it until the pandemic.
But just before the pandemic, before.
Would you say...
he goes, I'm a he.
I'm a he? Would you say you didn't release it to prevent competition?
No, I didn't have... Well... no. I wrote the book originally because I was trying to have a path for my kids to follow, and make some money. And but now with the internet, and it's just so much easier to get it out there. It's a little different. But hey, thanks for watching, everybody. What's the negative, Nancy? Zev Love. Here, watch this, and we'll see you guys here tomorrow or sometime soon. See ya.
And listen, time is on a mission to eliminate all the snake oil and the fake gurus that fake y'all. He'll show you how to build an empire, starting with nothing but a desire. All you really need is a good mentor, not a used car bullshit. With time, you'll learn to crush it. Investing like Warren Buffett. With real estate, you cannot procrastinate. Everyone who hesitates is left at the starting gate. Hey, yo, so don't delay and join today. The mentorship and Flip Anything USA. Go.